An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce, 1890. Read by LanternLeaf Audio. Timeless Tales by Lantern Light. A man stood upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. The man's hands were behind his back, the wrists bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. Some loose boards laid upon the ties supporting the rails of the railway supplied a footing for him and his executioners. 2 private soldiers of the Federal Army, directed by a sergeant who in civil life may have been a deputy sheriff, stood at either end of the plank on which the civilian's feet rested. Beyond one soldier stood a lieutenant, who in turn was directed by a captain. These 2 officers represented the federal government. The man who was engaged in being hanged was a civilian. His features were good: a straight nose, firm mouth, broad forehead, from which his long dark hair was combed straight back, falling behind his ears to the collar of his well-fitting frock coat. He wore a mustache and pointed beard, but no whiskers. His eyes were large and dark gray, and had a kindly expression, which one would hardly have expected in one whose neck was in the hemp. Evidently this was no vulgar assassin. The liberal military code makes provision for hanging many kinds of persons, and gentlemen are not excluded.
The preparations being complete, the 2 private soldiers stepped aside, and each drew away the plank upon which he had been standing. The sergeant turned toward the civilian, saluted, and stepped aside. At a signal from the captain, the civilian stepped onto the single remaining plank, balanced above the rushing stream. His face was calm, his manner resolute. As he stood upon the bridge, awaiting his fate, he thought of his wife and children. If I could free my hands, he thought, I might throw off the noose and spring into the stream. By diving, I could evade the bullets, and swimming vigorously, reach the bank, take to the woods, and get away home. What a fine escape! What a wild adventure! What a chance for him to be a hero before his family! The thought of his wife and children urged him on. The water beneath seemed inviting. The current, so swift, so strong, would bear him down quickly, far out of range of the rifles. The captain nodded. The sergeant stepped aside. The plank tipped. Peyton Farquhar was a well-to-do planter of an old and highly respected Alabama family. Being a slave owner, and like other slave owners a politician, he was naturally an original secessionist and ardently devoted to the Southern cause. Circumstances had prevented him from taking service with the gallant army that had fought the disastrous campaigns ending with the fall of Corinth, and he chafed under the inglorious restraint, longing for the release of his energies, the larger life of the soldier, the opportunity for distinction.
While Farquhar and his wife sat on a rustic bench near the entrance to his grounds, a gray-clad soldier rode up to the gate and asked for a drink of water. Mrs. Farquhar was only too happy to serve him with her own white hands. As she fetched the water, her husband approached the dusty horseman and inquired eagerly for news from the front. "The Yanks are repairing the railroads," said the man, "and are getting ready for another advance. They have reached the Owl Creek Bridge and have put it in order and built a stockade on the north bank. The Commandant has issued an order, which is posted everywhere, declaring that any civilian caught interfering with the railroad, its bridges, tunnels, or trains, will be summarily hanged. I saw the order. Suppose a man, a civilian and student of hanging, should elude the picket post and perhaps get the better of the sentinel, said Farquhar, smiling. What could he accomplish? The soldier reflected. The flood of last winter had lodged a great quantity of driftwood against the wooden pier at this end of the bridge. It is now dry and would burn like tow. The planter's eyes glistened. That is all I have to tell you, sir, said the soldier, rising and moving off. Good evening. Good evening, said Farquhar. But after the soldier had ridden away, Farquhar's wife came back from the spring with the filled pitcher. She was a beautiful woman, full of grace and sympathy. Peyton Farquhar looked into her eyes and thought of her with pride and affection. A while later, the same gray-clad soldier was passing through the forest. Half an hour later, he had rejoined his command. It was a Federal scout.
As Peyton Farquhar fell straight downward through the bridge, he lost consciousness. It was as if he were already dead, and as he awakened, it was as if he were already dead again. He was in pain, a sharp pressure at the back of his neck. He was suffocating. Then, the agony was followed by a sense of lightness, a sense of keen, poignant, bewildering lightness. He opened his eyes and saw above him a glittering stream of sunlight through the trees. The rope had broken. He had fallen into the stream. The current was swirling him downstream. He was conscious of motion, but not of effort. The water roared in his ears like the voice of Niagara. The whole world was a chaos of sounds, colors, and sensations. He heard the rush of the stream, the hum of gnats, the splash of fish. He saw the glint of the sun on the rippling river, the vivid green of the banks, the black arcs of swirling branches. He thought with joy of his escape. He had outwitted his executioners. He had broken their hold, cheated their rope, escaped their rifles. He swam with the current, striving to reach the bank. Bullets struck the water around him. The reports of rifles rang out behind him. The soldiers had fired a volley. The captain shouted orders. The lieutenant gestured frantically. But Farquhar, driven by the instinct of life, swam faster. He dived under, rising where the current bent. He flung himself toward the shore, arms burning, lungs bursting.
He reached the bank. He clambered up the steep slope, bruised, torn, bleeding, but alive. He flung himself into the woods. Through the tangled undergrowth he ran, heedless of branches, heedless of pain. He felt the earth beneath his feet. He smelled the damp of the forest, the fragrance of wildflowers. He saw the great trees stretch upward into the sky. He ran on, delirious with joy. He was free. He was saved. He thought of his wife. He thought of her smile, her gentle eyes, her white hands. He thought of his children, waiting at the door. He staggered out of the forest. Before him stretched a wide field. Beyond it, his home, white and peaceful in the morning light. He hurried toward it, arms outstretched. He saw his wife on the veranda. She rushed forward with a cry of joy, arms extended to embrace him. As he reached to clasp her, a blinding white light seared his eyes. There was a sound, a sharp snap, and all grew black. Peyton Farquhar was dead. His body, with a broken neck, swung gently from side to side, beneath the timbers of the Owl Creek Bridge. Read by LanternLeaf Audio.